easiest way to do this, it will be to use a hard drive, because I cannot do that, right? It's impossible that this will look right. But that creates some rhythms that could be something different. Imagine that suddenly I see that and I say, that could be a magma guy. Why not? And then I take this effect and I replicate it everywhere else. Most of the effects that you see are done by accident, and then having enough knowledge gives you the idea of where to stop or how far to go, right? Again, this is not bullshit. This is exploring, basically. And sometimes exploring comes from the lack of resources. Like here, I don't have many resources. I don't have my tools, I don't have my colors. I don't rely on those colors because these are not the ones that I used to use. It's also about not the quality of the colors instead of the property of the colors. That's another thing. Most of the people buy paints just because there is a tendency. How many times you have seen people saying, oh, new Chimera paints, let's buy them. Because why? Because, yes, because Francesco Farabi said them. Well, buy them, because the original concept was mine, it's written there. But, no, it's because those paints are good. And these are good, but these are good depending on what you're searching for. Because if you are a glazing guy, these paints are shit. Because they have a really good coverage. What does it mean? That if you are a pure when I say glazing guy, is a guy who dilute like the 90%. You are buying paints that are not made to paint like this, basically. And as soon, this is Chimera is a little bit chalky, right? Because it's a little bit chalky, the flow is not enough. So you can only make short glazes. So if you are a glazer, right, then you have a lack of fluidity, for example. I'm not saying you cannot glaze with that. I'm saying they're not the best to glaze. And some other people tell me, no, but I use golden acrylic because I saw them in the workbench of whoever, Marmas Clans, and then I decide to use them, right? Well, golden acrylic has no coverage, almost. So it's pointless if you are a base coat painter, the one who starts with a base coat and then build it up, to start with golden acrylic. Each paint has a different attitude, different properties, right? The more you know about the properties, the more you can control those properties, the more you can mix those properties. For example, if I want to paint and I want to have decent base coats, I can go for Chimera, because Chimera has a really great coverage, right? But we live painting with axiomas, I don't know, axiomas, right? That is, because it was said by whom? By the guy who is selling the paints? Because
I must believe them. I must believe them.
Yeah, well, I used to trust my politicians until they stole money for years, and then I don't believe them anymore. This is like any business. I'm not saying they're wrong, especially not the Chimera guys, that for sure, because these are a really good person. Obviously, they are saying that the product is good because the product is good. It is.
But I was tried.
Yeah, you have to try, but you have to try. You have to. You can do whatever you like, but you should try, in my opinion, with a goal. It's like analyzing what you're doing, right? Otherwise, you are just, it's like doing things without taking any conclusions.
To give you an example, for face, I buy all the sets for different companies.
All the sets?
Yeah, from scale and so, and I find some difference. For example, I will use what I find is better for me, or I feel to be comfortable for my style.
If you analyze them properly, you will probably not need to buy them to analyze, or maybe you have to buy one pot. That's it, because the features are not always the same depending on the colors. They can vary, especially in really intense pigments, because all these pigments are corrupted. These pigments are already filtered.
Also from Andrea.
Well, Andrea is probably the worst in this case.
I don't want to say nothing because you record it.
Well, it is. So, you don't need to buy the full set. Then you tell me, Alfonso, I love to buy sets because I'm a set collector. They are set collectors.
Also, I'm a set collector.
So then there is no discussion.
Also, a collector. So.
I'm just telling you what is better or what I think is better for you to learn. But then if you want to buy things that you don't need because you are a collector, it's good. I also collect. I collect paints that I don't need. Every time I go to an art shop, I collect paints. Indeed, my wife has to stop me. Like, you have 3 pots of this color. I was like, no, this turquoise is the first time I see it. And it's like, you have 3 of them, right? If you really want to experiment, go for the best pigments. For example, Dowler-Rowney. For example, Liquitex. For example, Winsor Newton. Why? Because those pigments can be reduced. I always make the same example. Still wet. I always make the same example. This is like if you drink chocolate milkshake or you eat a bar of pure cacao, right? Both are chocolate. The feeling, it has nothing to do one with the other, right? ¿Cómo se dice eso? ¿Cómo lo he dicho? ¿Está bien dicho? Vale. So the feeling will tell you that this is real chocolate and this is something diluted with milk or whatever. Does it taste chocolate? Well, it tastes chocolately, right? But this is not chocolate. Can you make chocolate with a milkshake? No. You cannot, because it's already corrupted. Can you make a milkshake with chocolate? Yes. So with paints it's the same. If you go to the source, the origin of the best pigment, right, then you can fade out this pigment. You can make it tertiary. You can corrupt it. You can make it pastel. You can make it more matte. But the best color will never be a flat, matte color. Never. Indeed, matte colors, which is a big pain in the ass for my speech, right? Because with matte colors, I cannot show you vibrancy. Because a matte color is based on the thickness of the pigment. If the pigment is completely smashed and is very thin, right, you will see that the coverage is regular and it goes like this. So light hits, travel, leaves, right? When a satin color, especially more if it's a heavy body color, this is bumpy. And that's why it reflects light much more. It's much more concentrated, but the application is not flat, right? So it's a matter of both. It's a matter of the thickness, and it's a matter of the quality or the feature of that pigment, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You don't mean it's opposite that the gloss color is the flat surface and the light hitting and reflects at the moment, in the matte color is porous, is more irregular, and the light reflects in different ways. That's why you don't see the shining.
The best feeling of depth, for example, which is the best way to, because I'm not a chemist.
Yeah.
So I'm explaining this to translate my speech somehow.
I have only one example. When you have the glass color, the glossy color, you can sanding, then the surface become rough, and then porous, and the light reflects in different ways. When you have the matte color and you polish them, you make them more regular, then that's why it's shining.
And then it's shiny, yeah.
And it's the,
But because you are polishing, so you are creating a surface reflective. It's a different thing.
yeah, but I mean you make more flat surface.
Yeah,
When it's-
I know what you mean. But I'm talking about the thickness of the paint. I'll give you an example. If you want to create the brightest highlight in a non-metallic, for example, in a canvas, and you go to a museum and you see the canvas of whoever, you will see that the brightest spots of light are thick. It's a pure titanium white, like literally
yeah.
like this, right? So thickness helps you to create this feeling of uncontrolled light, let's say, right? I'm not talking about the quality of the material. When you polish something, you are making it shiny, yeah, obviously. What I'm saying with that is the strongest color in terms of vibrancy how you perceive the colors, will be always satin. A satin red looks much more intense, looks much more vibrant than a flat red. It's also how it reflects the light. What's the problem? That obviously when we're painting a 3D canvas, sometimes the light could affect the canvas in a bad way if there is a satin color there. And that's the reason why most of the painters, man, I will have to pay you money or something. They don't want it, throw it.
Anyone wants your job.
¿Qué coño está diciendo?
Estamos hablando del grosor de la pintura.
Sí. It's a different concept. What I'm trying to say is, first, trying to encourage the people not only to use the color in a flat version. If you use a flat version and you're using a flat matte, so two concepts, a flat matte color, that color, the feeling will be always grayer, more grayish than in a concept of saturation and a concept of vibrancy of the color. What I mean with vibrancy, that is not a clear concept, right? Saturation is the purity of the color, let's say. How close is that color to his original source? That's why you can have a saturated red, but you can have a saturated mahogany, for example. It's also related with the amount of pigment, right? A glaze desaturate because reduce the pigment. While if you add more glazes, you gain saturation. That's correct? Well, everybody who is so obsessed with painting just with matte pigments, the problem they're finding is that they cannot find enough contrast. It's a matter of contrast. So that's why I encourage the people to go to the original pigments. The original pigments are almost always quite satin or quite glossy. Then a different thing is that you can reduce that in your favor. Let's say I will do the t-shirt very matte because this is not a glossy surface. But for example, the face, I will never use pure matte colors. Maybe I will use matte colors for the, thank you very much. For the mixture, I will use two matte colors, but then I enhance it with an ink because that gives me vibrancy. And what I was saying about the thickness, that obviously you are right, that when you polish it, right, light in a polished surface is like, with a porous surface, light hits and doesn't travel so fast, let's say. It just distributes in a more regular way. In a polished surface, light hits in one point and travels fast, normally in a narrower area, depending on the shape. This is a concept that is difficult to explain in a few words, right? Depending on the shape, depending on the material, depending on many factors. That's why there is no one way to explain non-metallic, for example. I used to do non-metallic classes, and I focus the non-metallic classes on explaining to people how to interpret the non-metallic, not how to do the non-metallic is a different thing. Because the reflections I'm seeing here, well, here's a good example. Here, that this is a very reflective material, but not polished, not very polished.
Very close.
Yeah, and this is a matte metallic, right? The ways that they reflect are completely different, but it's not only a matter of the material itself and the position against the light, because it's also a matter of the position of the viewer. It means he is seeing different reflections than me, right? Because light is something alive that is not fixed, right? So when we're painting something, we are always faking something, especially in a miniature, because a miniature, we are counting with many different sides that if you do, for example, a zenithal source light, a frontal zenithal source light, obviously the lateral side will not work the same way. Because it's how you gain the contrast, no? You play light here and then mid-tones or shadows here, like a traditional painting, no? Mm-hmm. Well, that means that when you see the lateral side, you have a lack of information there.
The artist wants that you show only the figure for the front view, because I mean in this way, when they give the highlights on the front and the shadows, the zenithal light, then the artist interprets that you will see always the figure on the front view. No,
But you know how people see the miniatures. That's also related with the speech.
They must take in consideration that the artist, what they want to transmit also.
Completely agree. The problem is that there is a disconnection. That's the good thought. You know, that's how we should perceive the figures. We were speaking about this with Tue before. It's like the artist is showing me the piece from this angle. Why the jury is taking from the bottom, searching for a failure. You know what I mean? How many times you have seen a beautiful, have you seen the anonymous bust that is peeling?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you all seen this piece?
Yes.
Then I must show you this. I did a contest based on that, which the goal was to offer the people the freedom to do whatever they want. And indeed, the idea was to award not only the technical things, instead of originality, pushing boundaries, you know, creativity in general. So that was one of the pieces. Is this interesting, guys?
Yes.
Yeah? That was one of the pieces that we received. Indeed was the winner. I didn't judge myself, just to clarify. It was Julio Cabos, Jose Manuel Palomares, Roman Lapat, Bolomir, Marc Masclans, and David Basilis, who is my Patreon mate. For example, this is a demo, a mixing concept. ¿No? ¿Se ve? ¿Se ve o no? This is a demo. This is 90 minutes. Do you think it works? Or that is interesting enough?
You can't see. The screen's got the stuff on it.
Keep on capturing TV.
Yeah.
Do you think it works? It's nice, no? It's interesting. Then you can say, I hate blue, so I hate it. But okay. But this is a good paint job. This is 90 minutes. This is not about bragging. This is about telling you that the stereotypes are already broken. And that's why if you want to spend 3 months painting this, that's up to you. But you can paint this in 90 minutes. Based on what? Basically, in contrast. If we go to the idea I said before, sorry, excuse me. Some effects, for example, you need, like this is a good example of what we were talking about, the thickness, for example. This kind of reflection that is quite strong, this has like 8 years old or 9 years old. That's a box art I did for 9 models many years ago, and it's a full 360. It works in every angle. Now we see things like this every day. Back at this time, not. To achieve this kind of contrast, you have to jump over the traditional paints. You cannot do it in any other way, because it may look like this in a picture, but then in hand, it looks different. We gain the glossiness through the screen. So let's say, you can paint this with matte colors, yes, only for the picture. If you want to make it works in hand, then you need to add different things. Like for example, that last colors is thick body. You know, it's like thick paste color. No dilution at all. Indeed, the brightest spots have, you can touch it and it's bumpy, right? Because it's the only way to achieve the effect. That's the example I was saying. This is this figure. What do you think about that? Interesting?
Can you zoom in?
Yeah, I was wondering, is it like really peeled, like?
No, this is just painting.
Yeah.
How you feel it? Good, isn't it? You don't like it?
Not for me, no.
Why?
I don't know. I'm old.
No, well, but I mean,
It's not for me.
but do you think it's not well done?
I would have to have another look.
You what?
I
Sorry?
would need to have another look, but yeah, it's not for me.
But it looks like it works only from this one angle. If you turn it, the effect won't work. It is
Does
going to
it?
be like the Indiana Jones street bridge.
That's,
You can look from the other angle.
that's what I was
It's
waiting
gone.
for.
Yes.
It works. I have bought this figure to the guy. It's an unknown guy from, I think it's in Norway or. It works from different angles, but obviously it works worse. And that's the point. It's like, why instead of taking a decision like, I don't like it, which is perfectly fine, you don't like it, I don't like, I don't know, I don't like classical music, I do, but maybe you don't like, it's your personal decision. There's nothing wrong, there's nothing right. But you cannot say that this is not well done, because it's well done, because the effect works absolutely, right? Then you can say, it's not my taste, and then you are out of this game. You know, you will search for other things that you like the most. But if you are interested in this and you like this, why the first question is always, will it work in other angles? Who cares? It's about how you display the art. And that was what you were saying. The artist doesn't pretend that you will check it from the back.
I believe that the artist placed the figure in his home in one